So, recently, I had the pleasure of playing a game called Dollmare, and initially, my expectations were fairly low. I like to consider myself as an avid horror game fan, and while I still get scared from time to time, I'd like to think that I'm a little more used to the worst sides of horror than most other people. So, when I visited the Steam page for Dollmare and was confronted with the description of it being a game made by developers who were too scared to play other horror games, I was ready for another indie horror game of the week that was decently fun but would probably become irrelevant after my first few playthroughs. Instead, what I was greeted with was something much, much more, and not in the way you'd think. Hi, I'm Socks, lost in the endless winding halls of the backrooms, and today I'm finally returning to my analysis and commentary videos with a game that I found to be of surprisingly high quality. When going into a horror game, one can usually expect a few chase scenes accompanied by plenty of jump scares with maybe the occasional boss fight. But what if a game didn't have any of that? Well, welcome to Dollmare, a psychological horror about working at a less than reputable doll factory for a suspiciously high paycheck. Before we get into things, I want to quickly throw up a content warning because this game is still scary and contains some fairly disturbing topics. If you find any of these topics disturbing, you have been warned. Oh, and obvious spoilers for Dollmare ahead. Without further ado, let us begin by learning what the game is even about. If you don't care for the story and just want to hear my commentary on it, you can skip to the timestamp on screen. Dollmare is what I would classify as an anomaly horror game, akin to games like That's Not My Neighbor, I'm on Observation Duty, and all of its 6 sequels? What the hell? Why are there that many? Anyway, instead of being the outside observer in a place of authority, you are positioned right in the middle of the action. You are employee name, and you've chosen to pick up a job working as a doll quality checker at a company called Sweet Cheeks, under the direction of a man only known as the director. Your job is fairly simple. All you need to do is verify that the dolls coming through the assembly line are made correctly. If they are broken, tattered, or made incorrectly, you throw them out. But if they're all good, you send them up the approval chute to be sent to some poor child who's about to get a terrifying haunted doll for Christmas. If a doll is missing parts, you need to take it back to the repair room and apply the necessary details. You'll occasionally get special requests for dolls that you need to fulfill by packaging them up and sending them down to the shipping department. And finally, you are also tasked with fixing various broken machinery in the factory when it eventually breaks down. Of course, it couldn't be that simple. Among the hundreds of dolls you need to process, you will find that many of them are, unfortunately, haunted, and need to be disposed of as well. They don't really pose any threat to you beyond just an inconvenience, but they are nothing if not creepy. On top of this, you are consistently plagued by the game's system of spooky events, which can range from a simple clown doll that peeks at you around corners and scurries away when you get close to a full-on minigames like this one, where you need to search the entire factory to find 3 dolls in a game of hide-and-seek. As you explore the factory, you can come across some notes left behind by a previous unseen coworker, simply referred to as K, which describe a very similar experience to your own, at least at first. On day 2, things get even weirder, as if they weren't enough already. As you are working your shift, something clogs the assembly line, and you are tasked with fixing this problem. However, the assembly room is less than normal, consisting of a nonsensical winding conveyor belt of dolls, and also the director is here. Oh, nope, he's gone. The factory itself is anomalous in nature, in that it can arbitrarily change shape and size at will. Day 3 shows this even more when you are locked inside the fulfillment room and need to enter the shipping elevator to escape. On the other side, you are confronted with a backrooms-esque environment made of winding, repetitive halls and comically large stacks of boxes. K's notes continue here and begin to allude to a more sinister side of the factory. On day 4, you meet the man himself, except it isn't in the way you might expect. That's right, your coworker has been turned into a doll, implying that all the other dolls, or at least the haunted ones, were once people as well. He instructs us to hide in the locker room, where he explains what we already know. Over time, the factory began to change him until he eventually became a doll himself. He tells us that this is the fault of the director, and that it won't stop unless we do something about it. But for now, we need to get back to work and pretend that nothing happened. This is exactly what we do on day 5, with nothing except for the regular hauntings bothering us during our shift. It is on day 6 where shit hits the fan. The factory is a mess and everything is bathed in an ominous red glow. All we can do is approve the dolls until the disposal chute opens up behind us, and Kay appears again, dragging us into the depths of the factory. After crawling through miles of doll parts and solving a few puzzles, we fall into a jail cell. Surprise, surprise, Kay was under the control of the director the entire time. We proceed through the prison as the various dolls mock us for being another cog in the machine until we are finally confronted with an exit. But after going through the door, we are confronted with none other than the director. He thanks us for being so obedient, releases a pink gas on us until we pass out. The final scene shows that now, we too have become a doll, ready for inspection by the next unsuspecting coworker. This is ending A, the bad ending. If we want to achieve the good ending instead, we need to go against the director's commands. While in the winding halls of day 3, we can find a coupon for a voucher for a crowbar, which we can buy after our shift. Using this, we can break the board, blocking off the mysterious door across from the locker room and head up to the director's office. Here, we find that he has been controlling Kay with a voodoo doll and using him to manipulate us. So we throw that doll in the disposal, freeing Kay from the director's control. Now, when we get to the final room of the prison, Kay is there and instructs us to reroute the gas line into the director's room, which, after he monologues, hits him instead and turns him into a doll. We then turn away, regroup with Kay, and finally escape to freedom. So that's the story of Dollmare. I tried to keep it as short as possible, but I also wanted to keep everything in there because it's a relatively simple story, whatever. It's nothing too special, and definitely isn't as deep as the other games I've talked about on this channel, but it's endearing nonetheless. But enough about the story. Let's talk about why this is different from other horror games, and what makes it so special. After reading out the story, you're probably thinking, wait, that's it? That isn't special, and you'd be right. It isn't special, and that's why I love it so much. It doesn't try anything new or that hasn't been done before. It's just itself, and I love that. I chose not to mention this earlier, but at the beginning of the game there's an alert telling you that there will be no jump scares and nothing will chase you. Initially, I found this to be really silly. The vast majority of horror games' horror comes from suspense, so outright telling the player that they don't have to be worried about jump scares or intense chases feels counterintuitive. And I'll admit, for a seasoned horror game player like myself, this removed almost all of the suspense and fear the game had to offer. But that's when I came to a realization. This game wasn't made for me. You see, the difference between a classic, terrifying horror game such as Outlast and a game like Dollmare is that Outlast is for people who already have an interest in horror. People who likely already consume horror media on a regular basis, or at least have an interest in the genre at all. Dollmare, on the other hand, is a much safer horror game. It's not violent, the gore is relatively tame, and I'll be honest, it really isn't all that scary either. But in my opinion, just because something is under the horror genre doesn't necessarily mean it has to be scary. I mean, look at some of the other popular indie horror games and you'll see what I mean. Games like Finding Frankie, Choo Choo Charles, and the previously mentioned You're Not My Neighbor are still horror games, but as I'm sure many critics have said before, they aren't exactly scary. For Dollmare, I believe this actually works towards its benefit. The game feels more like a movie than a game, in that the scary stuff just sort of happens around you, rather than directly to you. But Dollmare goes a bit further than the games I mentioned by also removing the threat of danger. It doesn't necessarily tell you outright, but there's no way to really die in a gruesome way, like in basically every horror game. It's all about the creepiness of things. The ambience, the environment, and the very popular fear of dolls is all that game really cares about. It also touches on things like the fear of being lost, claustrophobia, and even implied body horror with the people turning into dolls. What I'm trying to say is that a game can be scary without having jump scares or intense chases. Just because those work best with most other horror games doesn't mean they're necessary for a game to be classified as horror. And this is why Dollmare really opened my eyes despite being such a simple game. I wasn't really scared while playing it, but I still had a lot of fun, and to me, that's what really matters in the end. It's okay if a horror game doesn't make me have to take a break from how awful the visuals are. It's okay if the horror game doesn't make me think about how dark the plot was for the next few weeks. It's okay if horror is consumable. I think this game is perfect for people looking to get into horror, but aren't ready for any of the more mainstream crazy stuff. It's something to play while your partner, friend, or sibling who doesn't like horror is watching over your shoulder, and I think that's great. I suppose my whole point here is that the game is accessible to basically anyone. Yeah, there's still blood, and it's still a horror game, so it's not exactly for kids, but I think it's safe to say that most everyone will still have a good time with it. And if not, hey, the game is $5 for a no longer than 3-hour experience, so I think it's safe to say that it wasn't a total waste of time. Those who still can't handle the scary things the game has to offer will still probably enjoy the doll quality checking part of the game, which makes up a majority of your playtime. It's like those movies you put on when you know you won't be fully invested into it. It's digestible, and put simply, it's just a good time. So that's what makes Dollmare so special. But did this formula work? All this praise for the game's uniquely tame nature is nice and all, but is the game any good? My answer to that is, yeah, sure. I just spent insert time length here minutes talking about how it wasn't anything crazy, and as someone who's played through the game 3 times now, I stick by that sentiment. The gameplay was surprisingly fun, the characters were endearing, the story was nothing special, but still good enough to enjoy, and overall I had a good time. It's obviously not a perfect game. The story was predictable and simple, which isn't necessarily a problem, but in Dollmare, it made the later days feel a little bit slow. The doll making was fun, as I said, but it also got to be a bit repetitive after a while. I had no issue with any of the creepy events, though you do have to suspend your disbelief a bit for some of them, as they can feel a bit random in parts. Things like the hide-and-seek minigame you have to play with 3 of the haunted dolls felt very random, as nothing like it happens before. And it can be kind of annoying to search the entire factory only for them to be in the last place you check. I found the director's character to be a little poorly written. I get he's supposed to fill the stereotypical uncaring corporate boss archetype, but I think they went a little too hard, with some of his lines feeling uncharacteristically mean, even for a supervillain like himself. I will say that I did like how the game really didn't take itself seriously. I've been thinking about making a separate video on this, but I love horror games that don't try to be super dark and depressing all the time. Don't get me wrong, I love those types of games, but sometimes I just want a chill, laid-back experience, and that's exactly what I got with Dollmare. I forgot about this in the script, but the random creepy events that show up in the game are just that, random. So, one of the selling points of this game is that every player's experience with the game will be different. While this is true, I do want to point out that this randomness causes some unintentional issues, but they're also kind of obvious issues at the same time. The first is that there seems to not really be a failsafe for the same event happening over and over again. For example, there's this event where a little shadow doll appears behind you and disappears when you get close. I played this game once over with a friend watching me on a Discord stream, and this event happened upwards of 3 times a day, often multiple times in a row. I wish I got footage of it, but I can't record and stream at the same time. So you'll just have to take my word for it. I don't think I need to tell you why this removes any of the horror that the game already barely had to offer. And again, that's not a bad thing, but this is doing it in a bad way. It's okay that the whole game isn't scary because you know what to expect, but when the individual events that are supposed to be scary and creepy are repeated like this, it loses any of the creepiness it had in the first place. The second problem is that while yeah, every player's experience with the game will be different, there aren't that many creepy events, and you're likely to see all of them within your first 2 playthroughs. This is fine, since there's only 2 endings, but it feels a little lazy to me not to throw at least a few more in, so that the player would have to play at least 4 times to see everything. That kind of randomness could also spark more discussion online, as people share their encounters that other people might not have seen. I think this whole system of randomness is fine as a selling point, but it could definitely have been done better. Anyways, sorry for this long ramble, I just remembered it after finishing the script. This is the sort of game that, despite its flaws, is accessible to anyone interested in getting into horror. And that's why, even though it isn't perfect, I would love to see more games like this. Games that tell you outright what they're going to be, and don't bother trying to trick you into a false sense of security. Games that manage to be scary while also being comfortable. And most importantly, I want more horror games for people who don't like horror. As someone who's into metal music, horror media, and RWBY, I'm used to liking things that other people don't really care for. And I get it. Metal music is loud and intense. Horror is scary, and most people don't like that. And RWBY's perfect, you're all just wrong. But the biggest thing I hate about this is how I've had to tailor the things I like for the people I like. I only show certain types of metal to my friends who don't listen to it. Usually softer stuff that's less intense than the stereotypical screamo stuff. I mean, I still listen to that type of music, but I know that it's an acquired taste and that not everyone is going to like it. The same goes for horror stuff. If I was told to show a horror movie to someone who doesn't really watch them, I'd choose something a little more tame and mainstream, like the FNAF movie, or something on the outskirts of the genre, like the Terminator films. Stuff that definitely has some scary parts in it, but nothing that's going to make them have to stop watching. Just because I love that stuff doesn't mean they will. And that's why I believe that we need more content like Dollmare that perfectly fits this niche of digestible, chill horror that anyone can really enjoy. Like most genres, horror is a spectrum. On one end, you have the Terrifier films that will leave you disgusted and maybe a little traumatized after watching them. And the other, you have Dollmare, both of which have their own audiences. And that's okay. Horror media isn't just one thing, so collectively, I think we all just need to stop pretending that it is. Thank you for watching. Hey guys, just wanted to pop in here for a quick outro because I don't know how to make a video essay without one. If you enjoyed this video, I'd super appreciate it if you subscribed, and hey, I have some more commentary and analysis videos for you to check out if you're interested in seeing more. Sorry it's taken me so long to make analysis videos like this. I had a near-death experience back in May, and I'm still suffering the consequences. I prefer to put a lot more effort into these types of videos because I'm often talking about more sensitive topics, and it matters to me that I make them to a standard that I'm happy with. And that, it just isn't something I could do after spending a week in the hospital and moving out of my childhood home. I don't know if I'll be officially coming back to analysis videos, as the long-form stuff I used to do takes a lot out of me, and I need to work up to that level if I ever want to make content like that again. For now though, thank you for watching this video through to the end. Thank you to our members who have a new and improved members screen, isn't that beautiful? But yeah, thank you again for watching, and bye-bye.